Are you thinking of starting a blog in order to make some extra income? Let me tell you why that's a bad idea. Hi, I'm Jesse. I focus on helping scientists and aspiring scientists to improve their communication through lessons in science writing and science marketing, but this video is going to be for a broader audience, for anybody who's getting started with blogging for the first time. One of the most common mistakes that I actually see for first-time bloggers is trying to monetize their content too early in a way that ends up hampering their long-term growth. There are a lot of videos on YouTube that make it seem like it's really easy to make a lot of money writing right out of the gate, and I'm here to tell you that that's not really true. There are, of course, people who go viral immediately or very shortly into their blogging career and can make some money off of it, that way, but for the most part, you're going to be better served by thinking about monetization a little bit later on into the process once you've become established. So I'm going to give you 5 reasons as to why that's the case. Reason number 1 is giving yourself some room to suck. Imagine you're playing basketball for the first time. You've seen a little bit of the sport, you understand the ideas of it, you think it's interesting, but you haven't actually played any basketball before. You need to spend some time getting in the repetitions of dribbling, of layups, of learning the rules of the game, and you want to have some safe space to do all of that while nobody's watching, so that you can screw up a lot and not feel self-conscious about it, because if you're feeling self-conscious the entire time, you're going to do it very badly and it'll be a whole unpleasant experience. Now, obviously, blogging is very different from basketball in a lot of ways, particularly because viewership numbers are an important metric to follow in order to see how your content is performing. The issue is that monetization supercharges that in a way that is kind of unhealthy, because you begin to focus on the fact that you're really not making as much money as you would kind of like, when that's not what you should be doing at this point anyway. This is particularly true for people who are writing for the first time on the internet. Obviously, we've all written school papers and emails and things like this, but it's a very different experience of writing that kind of work versus writing for the internet, and it's worth taking that time to learn the rules of the game as to what works and what doesn't, how to put this content together, all of those sorts of things. And monetization puts an added stress on all of that, and you don't want to be worrying about that while you're focusing on learning the fundamentals and figuring out how to make great internet content. Reason number 2 is focusing on building an audience. Assume now that you have some of the fundamentals down of writing on the internet. Either you've done it before or you've done it for a little while now. Your next goal should be really focusing on building an audience and bringing people into your site, and monetization is going to be a bit of a barrier to that. Some people will be turned off by the fact that you have monetization features enabled at all. They'll see ads and they'll see subscription services, and they'll be turned off by that, by seeing you as too corporate or too much of a sellout. I actually don't think that that's very common these days, that people have kind of become accustomed to the fact that people are trying to make money off the internet, and if you're spending a lot of time on doing this, you should be accustomed by the fact that people want to be compensated by that. The flip side is that monetization features can still provide a barrier of things like site performance, or there's gated content that's there, and that can be a bit of a problem. So for example, if you have ads enabled on your website, this can slow it down and it will hurt your SEO and your search engine performance, and that is a barrier for people to finding your work. This is a problem that's particularly common for amateurs who are applying things like ads because they don't know how to do it, and so figuring out how to implement these things properly is a lot more time intensive than you might realize that it is. Even things like affiliate links and Google ads, maintaining these and operating them properly does require actual real time investment, even though they seem like it's one of those plug and play sorts of things. So you want to be focusing that energy and that attention to building an audience rather than figuring out how to work your site properly, at least initially. Reason number 3 is that you want to be able to develop a monetization strategy in line with what what your audience ends up being. If you want to be making money off of blogging, you should probably have a monetization strategy in mind when you first begin. There are a lot of monetization strategies that are possible. So there's ads, there's influencer marketing, there's affiliate links, there's sponsorships and subscription services. So those are some of the different possibilities for it. And when you're launching your blog, you should think about which ones make the most sense for you and have at least one in mind, assuming that you want to be making money. If you're not looking to make money off of blogging, don't worry about this. This video is probably not for you. So you should have that in mind, but as your audience develops and as your content develops, you want to have some abilities to change it. Let's use the example of organic chemistry help content for people who are those students. As I mentioned in the beginning, I focus on science writing and scientists, so this is associated with that. So you want to create stuff for high school students and university students to learn chemistry and organic chemistry, and you end up finding that your ideal was to have ad-based content, but you're really not bringing in the traffic that you thought. But there is a hardcore group of science teachers that are following you and really engaging with your content and seem to really like it. In that case, a subscription-based model might make more sense to monetize your content. Now, this isn't to say that you can't have multiple monetization strategies operational at the same time. You absolutely can, and I would encourage you to do so once you get to that stage of your journey, if it fits for what you're doing. The problem is that when you have a monetization strategy active, you're going to be trying to optimize for the signals that it's giving you. And in this case, you're going to be trying to bring in that student traffic when you should instead be focusing on making those chemistry teachers happy. Reason number 4 is that you should turn on monetization when things are ready and when things have ripened. Let's use the example of farming here. When you farm, there's a lot of work involved in getting everything set up, and it's really exciting when things first start to sprout, when you first have those beginnings of plants coming up. But that's obviously not when you harvest. You also don't harvest when you see a few little berries or a few little vegetables popping up. Like, that's not when you harvest. You harvest when things are ripe, and that not only is the best way to get the most out of this crop, it also maximizes the next crop, because now you have more money or you have more seeds to replant for the next time. So you should wait until things are very well established, that you're happy with the content, you've developed a solid audience, and then you can turn on monetization, particularly because turning it on earlier doesn't really get you nearly as much. If you harvest a crop early on in the process, you're not going to get very much out of it. The punishment isn't nearly that bad when it comes to monetization, but focusing too much on that monetization in these growing stages will compromise your growth over that medium term phase, and you should wait for things to mature a little bit more. Then you can enable them and start making that money. Reason number 5 is that there are just better places for you to write on the internet if you're looking for short-term money. So if you want to be writing on a place like Fiverr or Upwork, those are possibilities for that gig economy type job. You can also just go for full-on freelancing in the old-fashioned way of pitching different publications, because if you're writing about something, there's probably somebody else out there who wants you to be writing about something similar and for them. And that's not only a good way to make a little bit of money, but you can also hopefully develop a little bit of an audience of writing for those different places. You get to learn working with an editor from a different publication. So there's a lot that you can learn from doing that kind of work. And I would think that's a lot easier way to make that short-term money. And as you're working on that other content, you can still be devoting attention to your blog and helping it to advance over time. If you want to learn more about why you should start blogging, I have a blog post for you. It is found in the comments. It's one that I wrote up that talked about a lot of different ideas as to what you can get out of blogging and science blogging specifically. But that'll do it for me today. Thank you so much for hanging out. Be sure to like and subscribe if this was useful for you. As I mentioned a couple of times now, I do focus on science writing and science marketing related content. So yeah, follow me if that's the kind of thing that you're into. But if not, thank you so much for hanging out anyway. It's been lovely. Take care, everybody.